people retiring. Royce and Issa are retiring. Those seats are open. They want to get those, and Rohrabacher. If those don't happen, if they don't get both top seats, top positions, it means that this grand plan to take over the House will likely be failing. You know, another thing I'm looking for, Kelly Jane, enthusiasm, right? Because the opposition party usually has it in the midterms. We've seen some recent races, though, where Republicans in certain states actually came out to the polls in greater numbers than Democrats.
Yeah, that's why, people are really watching these races, especially in California. The New York Times has 30 journalists in the state, that one state, right now covering these midterms. And yeah, enthusiasm is definitely, everyone's looking at this as a harbinger of the midterms, and enthusiasm is definitely one thing they're looking at. Another is, I think, what the Democratic Party is going to look like and which way they want to head. We saw that, for example, in the Georgia primary, where you had two candidates, both named Stacey, but very different approaches. One wanted to reach out to Trump voters and try to bring them back into the Democratic fold. The other saying, you know what, we can't get these people. Let's go for minorities and other people who more traditionally vote Democrat. And so I think with a lot of these primaries, you're seeing those two approaches. And we're going to see which ones voters like and which way the Democrats are going to head going into the midterms. And whether that's which approach they choose will certainly do a lot for them or not in November.
Madison, speaking in California, the word is that if we're the top two Democrats, that literally tens of millions of dollars were poured into that race, both diametrically opposed to each other, sort of underscoring Kelly's point here that within the Democratic Party, there is some fissures going on. There's something is going on. I don't know if they're grappling for leadership, they want a new direction, pushing back against Nancy Pelosi, but there's something there that's cracking that party up.
From traveling across this country from back in the 2016 election until today, the one thing that I've heard from Democrats, not just in California, but in many states in the Midwest and on the East Coast as well, is that they feel like there's a lack of focus in their party, there's a lack of leadership, and they want that strong leader that we have in the Republican Party in President Trump. So they're disappointed, and I think we will see some shocking results, not only in the primaries, but also in the midterms in November.
But isn't this a good time to push back against Nancy Pelosi for them? I mean, listen, just as a political observer, I think now's the time to say, out with the old guard. Our leadership is old. We have people running. They win. They'll be 90 before the term is over. Madison, it seems like this is the time for a youth movement on both parties, but particularly the Democrats.
Yes, they need fresh faces, they need fresh leaders, they need a new strong message. Their only message cannot be attacking the president. To say what are they going to offer to the voters, what can they do for these districts,
quickly
that's
also,
not in their message.
Quickly, like Paul Ryan for the Republicans, she raises money. They need money, and that's why you don't hear many candidates speaking against her, because she brings money in. That's not helping the party overall, but it's money.
It's the ultimate Faustian deal. Ladies, thank you all very much. It was a great show, very passionate, articulate, and intelligent. I just have to sit here and listen. Now, thank you at home. Here's Lou Dobbs.
Good evening, everybody. Our top stories: a top FBI investigator testifying on Capitol Hill, revealing deep state corruption of the highest order, intimating a Clinton cover-up, and Obama administration spy operation aimed at not only subverting first Donald Trump as a presidential candidate, but then as president of the United States. The latest evidence shows FBI counterintelligence agent and official Peter Strzok playing an even larger role than has been understood to this point. And very much at the center of the FBI political corruption scandal remains Lisa Page and the tens of thousands of potentially explosive texts and emails. We take it all up tonight. Congressman Ron DeSantis and Chris Farrell, Chief of Judicial Watch Investigations, join us here. Also tonight, the busiest primary election evening of the entire midterm cycle, and there's little talk of the once mighty blue wave. Dems and rhinos alike running scared, however, or at the very least, highly anxious, as voters appear to be flocking to candidates aligned with President Trump's America First agenda. The Dean himself, Ed Rollins, joins us with his take on the races, their implications. Also tonight, President Trump with a counterplay against the NFL once again, making the left-wing owner of the Philadelphia Eagles wish he had never tried to politicize a planned visit to the White House.
We love our country, we respect our flag, and we always proudly stand for the national anthem. We always will stand for the national anthem.
President Trump honoring our country, our troops, while the Eagles players and their feckless left-wing owner sought only to huddle in their locker room while their fans honor the anthem, our flag, and our nation. Our top story tonight, stunning revelations from FBI espionage chief Bill Priestap on Capitol Hill today. More revealed about the role of FBI agent Peter Strzok and his part in the Clinton email cover-up and spying on the Trump campaign. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
The FBI's espionage chief, Bill Priestap, with direct knowledge of the Clinton email and Russia investigations, testified for the first time behind closed doors for House investigators.
How's it going in there?
It's like going to the dentist.
Priestap's former number 2 FBI agent Peter Strzok was a central player in the Clinton email probe and later removed from the Russia case for anti-Trump bias. Based on testimony and documents, one Republican said Strzok appeared to be running the show.
Not only the text messages that we have, but the emails that have been produced to the Oversight and Judiciary Committees. And so while technically that may have been a Bill Priestap call, I think it was more Peter Strzok driven.
One committee Democrat said Priestap's testimony was straightforward, direct, adding he intervened once the extramarital affair between Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page was known.
He was a supervisor, and so I think that he took the appropriate actions once he found out about the nature of the relationship.
Republicans want more information from Priestap about the alleged confidential human source that contacted Trump campaign aides. Priestap rarely traveled overseas, and lawmakers pressed him on a May 2016 trip to London and whether it was connected to the Russia probe that Strzok launched 2 months later.
Those would be confidential, and I can't really speak to those today.
Priestap, along with his former boss, FBI Director James Comey, and others, are the subject of the long-awaited Inspector General's report into the FBI's handling of the Clinton emails. With congressional committees in a holding pattern, waiting for the report to drop any day, on Twitter the president questioned, quote, "What is taking so long on crooked Hillary and slippery James Comey?" adding, quote, "Hope report is not being changed and made weaker."
Late today, the closed-door testimony concluded after about 6.5 hours, with one lawmaker describing Bill Priestap's testimony as extremely cooperative, adding that based on the latest information, so intelligence, testimony, and other records, it now appears that FBI agent Peter Strzok played a more significant role than previously known in the Clinton email and Russia investigations, a role that goes well beyond the text messages and what they indicate, Lou.
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Herridge reporting. Our first guest tonight, furious over the counterintelligence powers used against an opposition party's presidential campaign. Joining us tonight is Congressman Ron DeSantis. Congressman DeSantis is a member of a number of important committees, including Oversight and Government Reform, Foreign Affairs, and the Judiciary Committee. He's also the leading Republican candidate for governor of the great state of Florida. Congressman, good to have you with us. Let's turn to what we learned today from Priestap, and to the degree that you can share that, and the committees that were in a closed-door hearing to hear his testimony. Strzok is now, has been from the very beginning, it seems, at the epicenter of this, at the center absolutely of the scandal at the FBI and the Justice Department. Now it looks like he played an even larger role than anyone imagined.
I'll tell you, Lou, there's been few people that have done so much damage to the reputation of the FBI than this guy, Peter Strzok. Now, we've been following him for a long time. Remember, He was the one that bent over backwards to try to help Hillary. He was editing Comey's statement in ways that lessened her culpability about foreign interception of her emails. He's the one that changed the language from gross negligence to extremely careless to try to get it out of the statute. And then he turns around after Hillary's exonerated and opens up a counterintelligence investigation on the Trump campaign based off the supposed conversation between Papadopoulos and Alexander Downer, which we now know, Lou, Downer did not report any emails. He just said that someone had said that there's dirt on Russia. So there wasn't even an email basis. So as thin as read as possible. And then, of course, the text messages that evince his anti-Trump bias. He wanted Hillary to be president, and he hated Donald Trump with a passion. So I think this really just underscores the problems that you and I have been talking about with this investigation, these dual investigations for a long, long time.
Do you have some insight, because you have been among those who've been able to follow this throughout? It's been an extraordinary journey. You know more because of what you've been able to read, to hear in closed-door sessions. Why there was such a visceral hatred of candidate Trump, and what was the great threat to these agents and to the Department of Justice? Was it just sheer fear of being found out what they had done to cover up for Hillary Clinton? Your thoughts about their motivation and the reasons that they went to such extraordinary, un-American lengths to subvert a president?
Well, look, I think that Hillary was the consummate insider swamp candidate, and the people who are part of the permanent political class here, obviously people who are elected, but also high bureaucratic officials, I think they're much more comfortable with Hillary. Donald Trump is coming after this. I mean, he's like a sledgehammer to the DC swamp. He's an outsider from from the inside the Beltway mentality, and I think that they just viewed him as somebody that was going to upend the apple cart, and they didn't want that. And so maybe some of it's ideological, but I think it's much more that just Trump was an outsider that was really going to upend Washington, and I don't think they wanted that.
Yeah, and the disruptor against the establishment, the deep state, and I do think ideology played some role here, if I can disagree with you, at least at the margin in one area. Let's turn to that president who is today tweeting about, again, another delay from the Inspector General in that report being disseminated. He tweeted this: "What is taking," if we can put that up, "what is taking so long with the Inspector General's report on crooked Hillary and slippery James Comey? Hope the report is not being changed and made weaker." Your reaction?
Well, that's I think the fear is that the report gets presented to the Justice Department, who then has a period to review it, potentially suggest edits, redactions. And as we've seen, Lou, there's been a big problem with how Rosenstein and some of the folks at the FBI have handled Congress's request for documents when they redact a lot of things that have nothing to do with law enforcement sensitivity or national security. They redacted the fact that Andrew McCabe, they spent $700 on some table with taxpayer money for his office. So they're doing redactions more to protect the bureaucracy from accountability than they are to protect national security or law enforcement sensitivity. So if that is going on with this report, if they're trying to redact or change it to lessen the truth about how some of these high officials like Comey, McCabe, and Strzok behaved, that's a big, big problem. If it's just a matter of being thorough, look, I wanted it yesterday, I wanted it 3 months ago, but if we get a thorough report tomorrow or Monday and it actually leads to referrals on Comey, on these people who colored outside the lines, then I'm going to be fine with that. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
If you guys in Congress and the Senate don't have the energy and the spirit to march on the Justice Department, if there is redactions of an extraordinary number, if there are alterations in this report that the American people have been waiting for 6 months longer than we were told it would take to have that report before us, and we are told that the Inspector General is a man of integrity, but if this is another whitewash over the corruption of the FBI and the Justice Department, I mean, what in the world are you going to do?
Well, you're right, Lou. I mean, ultimately, Congress is going to actually have to use some of its powers, whether that's the power of the purse, whether it's the power of contempt, to actually hold people accountable if they're trying to do that. This is not, it's been longer than 6 months. This started January of 2017. Right. So we're almost a year and a half into this thing. And that's part of the problem. When it takes this long, it becomes more difficult to hold people accountable. So this thing's gone on way too long. And we need it, and we need a clean report. And if there are redactions, we've got to take issue with that.
And I think you just explained why Rod Rosenstein and the others behind the Stonewall are doing just that. Slow walking, stonewalling the entire oversight process and the public's right to know. It is terrible. your leadership, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, my gosh, I can't understand why the Republicans have not, particularly in the House, why you guys are putting up with it. Can you tell us that? Why are you putting up with a lame duck speaker who will still be in office in January of 2018? Do you know how that makes the conference look?
Well, we are working I think you're going to have a number of us go to the speaker and say, look, here's the documents we need. We need them to be declassified. The president's willing to play ball with us on it, but we need the push from the Congress, and we need someone that's going to be willing to back that so that we get the American people the truth in terms of how the leadership. And I don't know that having a lame duck makes sense, but that's nevertheless the direction we are on now. What I'm trying to do is get all this stuff because, like you said, Lou, they want to run out the clock, and if they're allowed to run out the clock, look, I actually think we're going to keep.
If they run you into the midterms, you're going to pay the price for it, not them. And that is the frustrating part of this. Of course, I mean, why should Paul Ryan care? He feeds at the trough of K Street, the Chamber of Commerce, the Koch brothers, the Business Roundtable, and Wall Street. And that's where he's going to feed the rest of his life.
But if we put our foot down on this, Lou, you do it because it's the right thing. But our voters would respond positively. They'd be willing to walk over hot coals to vote for Republicans in November. So we have it in our hands, not only to get the truth for the American people, but to set Republicans up to have a really strong midterm election.
All it takes is integrity and guts, as you well know, and as you demonstrate every day. Congressman Ron DeSantis, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks so much. Bombshell new texts from Peter Strzok and Lisa Page show there may have been more than one spy spying on the Trump campaign. Judicial Watch's Chris Farrell joins us here next. Stay with us. We're coming right back. It turns out some documents have been revealed. They've been out for a while, but for the first time, people are noticing what is actually said. Amongst them, Chris Farrell. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This becomes revelatory when we take a look at what is happening at the FBI, what has happened at the FBI, and the efforts to subvert the candidate for President, Donald Trump, and ultimately President Donald Trump. Unredacted texts that reveal how the FBI may have initiated a number of spies into the Trump campaign as early as December of 2015. FBI investigator Peter Strzok, writing to FBI attorney Lisa Page, asked this, quote, and if you'll look at this, you get all our Oconus lures approved, question mark in peculiar smiley face. The word Oconus refers to outside the continental United States. The word lures, which the FBI originally had redacted, refers to FBI recruited spies. Our next guest has first-hand experience running double agent operations while an Army counterintelligence officer. And joining us tonight is the Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell. Chris, great to have you with us.
Hello.
This is striking stuff. This sort of lays out, does it not, in very succinct form, what they were all about.
It was an intelligence operation directed against then-candidate Trump. They applied all the tradecraft they possibly could, and they deliberately avoided all the regulatory requirements of the executive order and also the Department of Justice regulations by launching a double agent operation overseas, hence the term Oconus. And in shorthand, these offensive counterintelligence operations, in plain English, that means a double agent operation. And that lure, or those lures plural, the important thing is it's plural, those are the persons that are sort of dangled out in front in the hopes that, interested parties would take a bite at them, and then of course the FBI would reel them in and run them against the Trump campaign. So this is, deliberate, it's thought out. It's an effort to run or launch the operation overseas so they don't bump into legal requirements. You'll note that it's an offensive counterintelligence operation, not investigation. another important word, because a counterintelligence operation is not constrained by the same things as a legal investigation or a criminal investigation. This is very, very serious stuff.
Very serious stuff, and there was a response from Lisa Page to the, did you get all of the Oconus lures approved? Page responded, no, it has just implicated a much bigger policy issue I'll explain later. Might even be able to use it as a pretext for a call. As we are watching these two operate, it is pretty clear they're operating in a very select circle. That they apparently seem to think, which they is centered upon certainly them, certainly on Peter Strzok. What are we to take from that?
We're taking that from very early on, back in December 2015, there's a concerted effort by agents of the FBI to apply intelligence tradecraft and intelligence operations to attack and undermine candidate Trump and now President Trump. It's indisputable. You can't go to the lengths they've gone to using the language that they have. And look, these are their own words. This is their communications back and forth. They were running an operation to undermine a candidate for President of the United States. They were seeking to have what is called undisclosed participation in a U.S. entity in the United States. These are all violations of law. This is not, a policy decision or, gee, somebody had bad judgment. This is intelligence tradecraft applied against a candidate to steer an election. There's nothing more grave when it comes to abuse of our legal and intelligence system.
And as we conclude here, what is to be done about Strzok? What is to be done by Congress about what now is before them in closed hearings, as well as in some documents of the millions that they've requested? The Congress is being stymied in its oversight role. There seems nowhere for them to go. What are the next steps, particularly as we see that this is a significant operation that was designed specifically to undercut candidate Donald Trump and ultimately President Donald Trump?
This is a level of criminality beyond the pale. Look, the president needs to rip the lid off this, as does every member of Congress. Any person involved in any sort of an oversight capacity or any, management position, whether it's the president, the attorney general, whoever has any influence whatsoever, needs to rip the lid off this and make it public. This is such a grave abuse of power and authority. It's like nothing else we've seen in our history. This makes, the Nixon Watergate burglary look like Keystone Cop stuff. This is very grave, and the public has a right to know and should know as soon as possible all the details about this.
Chris Farrell, Judicial Watch, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou.
Be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question, do you think the Department of Justice and FBI's obvious inability to conclude any investigation is evidence of their political corruption and general incompetence? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, the busiest primary evening of the year, and Dems in key states are worried that the blue wave won't even appear. It might not even amount to a ripple. We take that up with the Dean. Ed Rollins joins me next. Stay with us. Unflagged as a U.S. national security threat. The Times reports claiming that Facebook had an agreement with Huawei going back to 2010, and it remains in effect to this day. Facebook officials say they will end the Huawei deal sometime later this week. How generous of Facebook, don't you think? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has canceled this year's August Senate recess. McConnell says dim obstructionism is the reason. The threat of endless filibusters impeding the passage of spending bills before the end of the fiscal year, dozens of the president's nominees for key positions in the administration and in the courts also remaining unconfirmed, and apparently Mitch McConnell has taken notice of, well, almost a year and a half into the president's term, that he is not getting any cooperation from the Democrats. Kelly Sadler, the White House aide who mocked Senator McCain and then word was leaked out from the White House, is out. This comes about a month after her reportedly insensitive comments about McCain's health were leaked out of a closed-door White House meeting. A senior administration official telling Fox News her departure not related, at least directly, to the McCain incident. Make of that what you will. And interestingly, no word that the leaker is leaving the White House, which is somewhat disturbing, really, when you think about it. Joining me now, the dean himself, Ed Rollins, former Reagan White House political director, Great America PAC chairman, and can we just leave it at Great American? Good to have you here. Kelly Sadler, she goes and the leaker stays.
Leaker stays. I have to tell you, just as someone who gets a lot of their stuff, she was a very good operative. She never was a leaker. She was very quiet, worked behind the scenes, made an inappropriate remark in a private meeting and got it leaked. But at the end of the day, she should not have been fired or chased out of there. The person who is the leaker, who she's taken on, should be driven out, but they're not.
Well, she told the president that the biggest leaker in the White House is the head of communications, Mercedes Schlapp.
Best of my knowledge, she's still there and hasn't been accused of anything. So, at the end of the day here, if you're going to clean up the Lakers, people know who they are, and they need to get them out of there. That's the bottom line.
Well, why is the president so reluctant?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
All right. Well,
but he pays a price for it every day.
Yeah, it's a shame. Let's turn, if we may, to the midterms and the primaries. We've got 8 races tonight to be settled.
Big day today. Alabama, California, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. 2 races that will have there's 4 Republicans running to take on Tester, who is Trump's number 1 target. Montana. My PAC has endorsed Mark Rosendale, as another, most of the conservatives have. It's a competitive race. And then the real other part of this is in California, where Democrats have 7 or 8 targets, but they're kind of handicapped because there's so many Democrats running. They have this jungle primary, which means the top 2 go. So there's 3 or 4 seats they might have had a good shot at that may end up not getting anybody in the final. They may get 2 Republicans in the finals, and those are the Issa seat and the Royce seat. So at the end of the day, if there's 2 Republicans running in those Orange County seats, we'll do all right, and they won't be on their way. So
how about Dana Rohrabacher?
Dana's one of those. He's got a Republican opponent. The Orange County chairman is running against him. I would argue it's better to have the 2 Republicans again in the race, and I think that can very well happen.
That's quite a turn of fate, isn't it? That the Republicans, by focusing on 1 or 2 folks, may trump those many candidates put forward by the Democrats. They're too greedy, apparently.
They're too greedy. They have 10, 15 in some of these races, and obviously they're going to split the vote up. And this was an idiotic process in which the top 2 get to run, created by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who basically destroyed the Republican Party when he was a Republican governor. And this basically is the death knell.
The funny thing about Schwarzenegger, I don't know how he ever got registered as a Republican. I mean, he is the funniest guy. And he was a lousy governor, a lousy candidate, and still,
And unfortunately, maybe the last Republican elected statewide. If we're not careful here, we don't have a serious candidate in either the Senate race or the gubernatorial race. Although I do hope we get John Cox, who is running for the Senate.
What are the odds for governor?
I would say very slim. Very slim. So.
California, you may sleep well tonight. Well, Ed Rollins, thanks so much.
We're now on 3rd place in California, the state I grew up in. None of the above does better than the Republican Party.
As Ed Rollins licks his wounds, we say thank you, and until tomorrow when we can look at the results.
No longer the country of Ronald Reagan.
There you go. Coming up next, getting America back to work. It's the country of Donald Trump. Yes. An American steel plant adding hundreds of jobs. All of that because of President Trump's insistence on American jobs, American steel, and, oh yeah, American tariffs. U.S. Steel Chief Executive Officer David Burritt joins me here next. Trump's insistence on American jobs, American steel, and oh yeah, American tariffs. U.S. Steel Chief Executive Officer David Burritt joins me here next. Energy products, if only the Trump administration would drop $50 billion in tariffs on Chinese exports. The offer doesn't come anywhere near closing America's $375 billion trade deficit with China, and the White House says it's still enacting the tariffs by mid-June. President Trump's new tariffs on steel and aluminum imports bringing jobs back to America. Case in point, U.S. Steel Corporation, which today announced the planned reignition of a second blast furnace at its plant in Granite City, Illinois. U.S. Steel plans to hire another about 300 employees after hiring 500 back in March. Joining us tonight is the CEO of U.S. Steel, David Burritt. David, great to have you with us. And this president is truly making a difference for your industry, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Thank you very much, Lou. We're delighted to be here. We're delighted to see that demand has increased significantly. And so we're able to open up not just one blast furnace at Granite City, Illinois, but 2 blast furnaces. And as you said, that's 800 people we'll have back to work. And we're putting them through the paces now, and they're responding exceptionally well. And we should be able to turn on that first blast furnace later this month, and then the second blast furnace in October. So we're absolutely excited for our team and for our customers so that we can provide mined, melted, and made in the USA steel.
Yeah, you know, your company, your trade style is iconic America. And to think what U.S. Steel has gone through over the past several decades is extraordinary. And it has required Donald Trump to basically step up and say to the world, you're out of your minds. We have such trade imbalances across the world. He is the only voice in leadership in the world, in the Western world, talking about trade imbalances and restoring rationality to the international trading system. And the left and the, if you will, establishment right are just clucking like they're wailing, gnashing their teeth, as if he is the one prescribing a destiny that should make every American shiver instead of the destiny that we have been living for 30 years.
Well, President Trump does have it absolutely right. He needs to trust his instincts. You know, the reality in steel, we've been in a trade war for over 30 years. Yep. And you can imagine it takes a courageous president like this to get people to the table, to have a discussion, and actually force some resolution here. Meanwhile, we're doing the right things for our workers here in the United States. And, of course, special thanks to Commerce Secretary Ross and Peter Navarro, who have been fighting the good fight every step of the way.
Absolutely.
But it's certainly the president's leadership that's made a difference with 232.
Yeah, it's amazing to think what this president was saying in 2015 about American-made, American jobs, and the fact that the United States has played chump for so long. Most Americans don't realize we have not had a trade surplus in this country for over 4 decades. That's just irrational. And we've had both Republicans and Democrats in that White House who have basically conspired against the working man and woman in this country, a middle class, families, workers, and middle class wages, as you well know, have been dropping, not rising, until this president took office.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it hasn't been intentional by previous administrations. It's been the absence of acumen, the understanding of what's really going on here.
Right.
Because what we want is a level playing field. That's all we want. You give us a level playing field and we can compete with anybody in the world.
And you know, I can remember back in the 70s when people were saying exactly that. And then the 80s, they were saying that. And by the 90s, it was too damn late, we thought. But it turns out, in 2016, we weren't too damn late. President Trump arrived on the scene just in time. And
well, that's absolutely true because, this steel industry is vital to the national defense of this country. And it's not just the military. It's building the roads and the bridges and taking care of our society. If you don't have a strong commodities industry, you really can't make things for manufacturing. And we know how these bad actors behave, some of them even allies, that they basically take the business away and then they jack up the prices and they kill the industry and then jack up the prices. So we know what game's being played, and this president understands what game's being played. And now we got the customer demand coming back to the good old USA, and our steel workers are absolutely thrilled to be part of this.
David Burt, we are delighted that you're with us and hope you'll come back soon to talk about the continued success of U.S. Steel and this great country of ours. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having us. Thank you very much.
You betcha. Up next here, the Dems and rhinos are relentless in their pursuit of amnesty for illegal immigrants. Why is that? We'll have the latest for you on the DACA discharge petition in Paul Ryan's House of Representatives. It's right next to K Street, the Koch brothers, Wall Street, the Business Roundtable. Straight ahead, all of that and more. We'll be right back. Fox News Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel with the story.
In the House, some GOP moderates are trying to break up gridlock on immigration. 2 more Democrats signing on today, so organizers are just 3 short of the 218 signatures needed to force votes on immigration bills June 25th, as House Republican leaders try to find a GOP solution.
We're very close on a couple of different fronts that really boil down to how are we going to handle the DACA recipients.
President Trump weighed in on immigration first thing this morning on Twitter. Separating families at the border is the fault of bad legislation passed by the Democrats. Border security laws should be changed, but the Dems can't get their act together. Started the wall. Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued this warning to those considering coming here illegally.
We don't want to do this at all. If people don't want to be separated from their children, they should not bring them with them. We've got to get this message out. You're not given immunity.
The acting head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement offered this advice to lawmakers.
If you want to do a fix on DACA, let's talk about the overarching issues of illegal immigration, and let's fix that so we don't have a DACA every 10 years.
It's not clear that immigration would be brought up during August, since McConnell has said he's only interested in taking up a bill President Trump would be willing to sign. But cutting short recess could have the effect of forcing some cooperation on legislation and nominees. Lou?
I appreciate it very much. Thanks so much. President Trump threatening to veto any such legislation. Mike Emanuel, thank you. And on Wall Street, stocks closed mixed. The Dow down 14 points, the S&P up 2, the Nasdaq up 31. Volume on the big board, 3.4 billion shares. The United States, the world's largest oil producer, asking Saudi Arabia and OPEC to raise their oil production by 1 million barrels a day to help fight rising U.S. oil prices. Think about that one. Think about that one. We're one of the world's largest producers now, and we're asking OPEC to kind of boost things up so that I have to tell you. A reminder, listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, no Eagles, no problem. President Trump celebrates America after canceling the Philadelphia Eagles' White House visit. Rebecca Rose Woodland, Mark Simone join me here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. President Trump celebrates America after canceling the Philadelphia Eagles' White House visit. Rebecca Rose Woodland, Mark Simone join me here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. After the team's White House visit, President Trump turning the event on its head, canceling their visit today and instead holding a celebration of America, where he reminded us of why, all those folks should be standing and singing the national anthem instead of, as he put it, huddling in their locker rooms.
We stand to honor our military and to honor our country and to remember the fallen heroes who never made it back home. We stand to show our love for our fellow citizens and our magnificent Constitution.
Well, following the cancellation by the president, Philadelphia's mayor, oh, what a piece of work he is, Jim Kenney, called President Trump a fragile ego. What in the world is Lurie thinking, the Eagles? I mean, it's really unbecoming the city of Philadelphia.
It's unbecoming of our country. They're taking a political stand. If they have an issue with the president, that is not the way to do it, nor the mechanism. If you have an issue, you go and vote. Next time there is a presidential election, you do not force a group of people who won a Super Bowl, a city, a state that's so proud of their team, to then not have the celebration they're entitled to by playing games. Yeah. It's not appropriate.
Well, they're not entitled to if the President of the United States says we're not going to play your
because they played games.
And this to me is remarkable, that the NFL has just sort of saved itself. Like Roger Goodell, who I've criticized throughout for 2 years, actually doing a smart thing. And then he's got this cute Lurie, the owner, pulling this stunt with his football team.
It's fascinating. These owners are billionaires. They run multi-billion-dollar businesses, and they're totally intimidated by these dopey players. They can't sit them down and say, you're an employee. The stadium is our office. You can protest all you want. Can't do it here in the office. We're running a business.
And we give you plenty of money and free time, so why don't you go do the right thing?
Go protest. Yeah, and well, it's one thing to protest the flag. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. You're protesting the White House? Yeah, it's a part of America.
It's crazy. NBA stars Steph Curry, LeBron James. LeBron may be Curry may be beating his brains in on the court right now, but they're together in fueling this anti-Trump thing in the NBA. Where is this going to stop with these athletes?
I don't know if they recognize that by not standing for the national anthem, what you're doing is insulting veterans, people who stood up for our freedom. The national anthem is not directly related to the president. It's the country as a whole. It's democracy. It's the Constitution.
Explain it to the genius, Jeff Lurie.
I don't understand how there can't be a distinction. Again, Mark is right. If you want to protest, you either protest in the voting booth, protest in a different way, not with your group, not when you're playing a sport, and not against the entire of America, the veterans.
Tonight, we've got 8 primaries. Mark, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to see the blue wave? All of the savants now are saying no blue wave.
Oh, no, there'll be a huge blue wave. They're leaderless. They have no issue, except they hate Trump. They're rudderless. The DNC has no money. They
want open borders. They want high crime. They want illegal immigrants to cross the border at will. And by the way, don't worry about a job. In California, they want to give you 500 in Stockton, California. They want every citizen to have $500 a month, guaranteed income. You got to. What's not the law?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Strict background checks on guns. But if you want to cross the border, no background check. We don't care who you are.
Yeah,
it's starting to sound a bit like Bernie Sanders' campaign, where everyone was going to get college education. And although that was lovely, economically, it's not feasible. I mean, we have to work within the tax structure and the money we make on the tax structure. These things sound great, but they have to be funded.
Yeah, somebody has to make some money at some point and has to create a product and a service. It's called life, unless they want to just revert to the jungle, to the primitive state. It's mind-blowing.
You've got record low unemployment.